We started the SLS in 2010 when it became very obvious that we needed to work with the military and partner with the military to be ready for any kind of disaster. Right now, what we're doing is we are learning the language that each other talks. San Francisco, I believe, is leading the nation with what we're doing with Fleet Week. We want to be able to know each other ahead of time, not to meet each other at the event.
We really appreciate the sacrifices that you make each and every day, leaving your families to serve our country and to protect us. So it is an honor for me to be speaking and representing the mayor, but also a big warm welcome to San Francisco.
I go down to the ship about 5 hours into the exercise. There's Marines inside that, in the well decks, slashing big pieces of gear down. They're hot, they're sweaty. There's a lance corporal in there. Says, you understand why we're doing this mission? Oh, yes, sir, I got it. I've done this mission overseas. I've done this mission for other countries. So, sir, this is the most important mission of this Marine's career, my life. And I'm like, why is that, son? Why is that? The kid looked me right in the eye. Little leadership lesson for an 07. That young Lance Corporal looked me in the eye. Sir, if I'm doing this one, I'm doing it for my own countrymen. My own countrymen. Most important mission of my life. If we have to do this and we're sitting there 40 miles off your coast, San Francisco, it's because we're going to do it for you. I give you my word, we'll be there and we'll do it for you.
Look at each other square in the eye and look at the way our systems would interoperate, whether it's communications, aviation, heavy equipment, trucks, transportation, distribution, all those functions, and have an opportunity to do that over a Fleet Week.
This year, we did something that we had not done before, which was simulated a 7.5 catastrophic earthquake here in San Francisco, and we tested a few different components through a rehearsal of concept drill, a rock drill on Monday, which was, I felt, very exciting. We basically test it for transportation and logistics.
We found out with loading the Pacific Gas and Electric vehicle that the wheelbase was a little closer to the middle, and that when we backed the vehicle down, it actually hit the ramp prior to us loading it. So one way that we can alleviate that is in a disaster event, we now need to incorporate into our plans to bring wood for shoring and different things like that, that we could raise the level of the vehicle as it came onto our landing craft and help alleviate those kinds of obstructions. And then that gives us a lot more capability to transport different types of vehicles. So before the drill, we knew that it was something that was to think about, but because we hadn't actually executed it with a Pacific Gas and Electric truck, it was hard to determine if it would hit and how the tides were at the ramp. Would it actually hit? And so with our military vehicles, we have all the specifications and we've done it. We understand how they're all designed to fit on there. So it's one of the reasons that we want to identify which vehicles fit and don't fit, or how we can make them fit in a disaster, so that we have this plan figured out in advance.
The only time the military, the United States Department of Defense, is allowed to operate within the United States under civil authority, and to make sure that we understand each other's limitations and processes. So when this happens, we have a familiarity with each other and how to best respond and provide support to the citizens.
To combine together to create these task force entities, and it's really important because they all bring something different to the table. They all bring a unique set of skills needed for different facets for effective disaster relief.
These fires occurred while we were already facing an unprecedented fourth year of drought here in California. We had already had a very active fire season, and I'm sure these stats have grown, just over 7,000 fires and 760,000 acres to date. Fire season is by no means over. We're just entering the fall. We know that there can be significant issues in Southern California, particularly in the fall, so expect this to continue on for the foreseeable future. And these events really emphasize the scalability and flexibility of the system, and again, how quickly things can unfold and how we have to be prepared to respond rapidly to whatever needs arise.
Today we have this wonderful opportunity to meet and learn from experts across the globe, really, about disaster management and lessons learned, and just our capabilities and how we would integrate and synchronize in a catastrophic emergency. When you bring in just a whole host of partners that include city, county, state, and federal, including DoD and military assets, those efforts need to be coordinated and synchronized and actually matched to the specific need of the jurisdiction impacted. It's just an honor and a pleasure to meet the people that come out here, because they're pretty high-ranking officials, and I don't have the opportunity oftentimes to meet them. So it's quite an honor to be present and engaged today with the levels of leadership you have here.
Generally, military operations other than defense support of civil authorities do have priorities. Our priority mission is always defense of the nation. But we have heard the admirals and the generals say today that if needed and we're available, we'll be there to help. Navy and Marine helicopters fight fires in Southern California about every other year, and it's based on a request for assistance from San Diego County to the operational commander, and actually it goes through the installation commander, and then it gets to the operational formation, and then they coordinate directly with San Diego Fire for that. In the case of a Bay Area earthquake, the lead federal agency would be FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. They would determine what assistance is needed from the Department of Defense based on the state's requirement. This helps guys like me format the request with FEMA for DoD assistance. It takes what could be a 3-day thing to format this thing. It takes it and turns it into a couple hours. The goal is a couple hours.
The next phase, after we talk about the risks, the planning and the exercises, is really how do we buy down that risk ahead of time? And one of the things we do is we provide grants to state and local governments to buy down that risk. Most of our programs at FEMA are programs that are reactive to the event happening. So there's a lot of opportunities to leverage that funding to build capacity at the local government level to be able to do that. How else do we do that? One of the ways we do that is codes. And Secretary Shultz was talking about codes with regard to fire prevention and removing fuel before fire season, and how do we establish those codes so that we build fire-resistant roofs and we do things especially with regard to earthquake, and better engineerily develop codes that allow buildings to stand after earthquake. DoD has programs where they provide excess property, and I was talking to Bob beforehand, and I was surprised to learn just this year they provided $1 billion of excess property to states and local governments to help them build capacity. So those programs are out there. This is an opportunity to see some of those capabilities.
I think technology specifically is going to continue to play a more and more vital role in all the things that Fleet Week represents, quite frankly. So everything from actual combat to disaster preparedness and resiliency, and everything in between, operations and all those sorts of things. I think technology is just becoming more and more a bedrock to success in any of those areas. And so I think there is a strong opportunity for us to contribute in many of those facets.
We have what we call our NERV truck, which is a network emergency response vehicle. And in that NERV truck, and that's used mostly locally, if you will, domestically, we have capabilities for satellite link up, for cell phones, for any type of communications that can be used. And we'll deploy that, and that's what we did in the Waldo fire and others, is to get that there immediately. Now, if it's further away and if we can't get the NERV truck there in a short period of time, we actually have developed emergency communication kits. Both those kits are transportable. One has to be checked-in luggage. The other actually we can take with carry-on luggage. And in those kits, when we bring them out, and they can run off a battery and solar power, by the way, we're able to establish IP communications immediately.
We're very specific on making sure that we prepare the network for any situation. The next thing that we do is we're very proactive at running drills. So we do a lot of disaster recovery drills. And so when we do those drills, a perfect example is right now we'll run a drill at the next football game for this Super Bowl. and we'll run a scenario that nobody will know about except me and my disaster planner. That will put the team in a situation where they need to make sure they have the ability to respond.
We connect neighbors. That's the most important thing we do. And then we allow the city or the county to post individual messages to specific neighborhoods, because the same message is not relevant to all neighborhoods. So they can post individual messages to individual neighborhoods, or the same message to a group of neighborhoods, or the same message to all neighborhoods, or send urgent alerts. Now, for all of you in the military, you have a city or a county that surrounds you, or you ought to find out if they're using Nextdoor, because it would be very helpful to you. We're 4 years old. We have 1,200 agencies throughout the U.S. that are using Nextdoor, government agencies. We have 77,000 neighborhoods throughout the United States that have a Nextdoor up and running. We guess that that's about 40% of all the neighborhoods in the United States, so we're there. The government needs the residents to be partners. This is not about how quickly can we, the government, or the local or the state or the federal or any agency such as yourselves, how can we fix things? It's how can we partner with the neighbors to get their neighborhood back? And that's what we're all about.
From my perspective, what the future is companies like mine and companies like Nextdoor and the tech world here in Silicon Valley is looking at solving the problems that you're all talking about, giving you the ability to collaborate so that you can build that capacity.
What you're doing here, I think, should be a model for the nation. DoD has evolved significantly over the last 10 years, both in our capabilities and our approach to the way that we do defense support to civil authorities. We've made huge organizational investments. We've also made great capability investments. We have, right now, today, 18,000 military members on alert to respond to a sea burn event. National Guard forces, active forces, and reserve forces. We've identified forces and have about 6,000 to 8,000 forces postured right now in the Defense Department to perform DISCA operations. Emphasizing the importance of our installations. That is a huge part of what this department can do to support civil authorities, beyond the tremendous operational capability that you see here at Fleet Week. In my opinion, the military benefits greatly from DISCA operations. And that's kind of a unique perspective that sometimes we don't bring to the table.
We know that one of the most important things that we can do prior to any event is to actually have an inventory of our needs as far as the requirements for generators. So have we assessed our buildings? Do we know what our critical facilities are, and can they take generators, auxiliary power? What type is needed for each type of property? There's a tool called the Emergency Power Facilities Assessment Tool, which is a pre-planning tool that any city or county can utilize, and it will help them to make a database of information that we can then provide to our military partners.
The MARAD ships can load fuel tankers and bring those right down to the pier in San Francisco. And from there, they stage in bulk, and a fuel tanker is not the bulk we're looking for. Other sources of bulk would be either fuel barges or DoD systems with fuel bladders.
So we discussed through like Web EOC, and when our logistics chiefs are trying to get orders fulfilled during an emergency mission, they're getting these orders from the field and they're just stacking up apparently, and there's no priority to them, and it's taking far too long, 2 to 3 weeks they're saying, for these orders to get filled. When you're in the field and you have all this information coming in, and it's typically crowdsourced now, right, through Twitter, Facebook, the public sending in these messages and tweeting and posting photos of what's out there, how that information is getting into the EOC so that decisions can be made.
You have our governor who's been signing very aggressive campaigns to reduce our reliance on conventional types of energy and being focused on more renewable types. I think you also have efforts to try to make sure that that sustains throughout a disaster. And so sometimes those are two very different conversations, and I think part of our intention with this panel is to try to tie those together and try to give some more light to that.
We've created a
a community microgrid, if you will, so that in the event of a natural disaster, we can make regional decisions on where to put excess generation capacity after we've taken care of our own critical loads. And so that's the thinking that Secretary McGinn and the Secretary of the Navy has got us on, and that's the path that we're working towards, is to achieve that strategic capability so that we can, of course, become better warfighters ourselves, but also take care of the community where our soldiers and sailors live in, and form that regional response that we've talked about a lot today.
We now have modeling within the company that we can take the shakecast reports that come from the USGS, and we run those through a model, and we can sort of determine what kind of damage could we expect within a San Andreas fault. So we have certain models that we've already developed. You see up there San Andreas is 7.9, the Hayward North and South faults, Rogers Creek, and we're going to continue to develop these models. In addition, that model tells us, okay, you can expect 200,000 hours of work would be coming your way. But we also have another model now that sort of tells us, within this area, you need to go patrol these hydro plants, or you need to go patrol these substations, because based on the modeling, it tells us we may have some damage there that we need to actually go put eyes on those facilities.
Fuel cell vehicles are on the market. You can lease them, right? But do you know how they work? Basically, you have hydrogen, it goes into a fuel cell, it creates electricity directly. That electricity goes to an electric motor. So on board a fuel cell vehicle, whether it's a car, a bus, a truck, you have an electrical generator. The Maritime Administration is looking at a hydrogen fuel cell ferry that would have 4 megawatts of power generation capacity on board. Same thing, pull that up, plug your city into this ferry, be able to power it in the critical 24 hours or so after the disaster happens, before all of these other assets can be mobilized.
How do we reduce energy consumption? One way to ensure that a technology that we have is around membranes. So membranes, we're looking at things like water treatment. How can you use salt water and use membrane systems to desalinate, for example, so that in any situation, but also in a disaster situation, you would have portable water. So again, as we look at technologies and we look at really the energy requirements after a disaster hits, it's around ensuring that we have things that don't require a lot of energy.
Some of the wars were not very popular around here. So we had a kind of a downhill period. General Mike Myatt came to town, and he has turned this around. He observed Fleet Week. It's been going on a long time, but it was beginning to lose momentum. And Mike said, why don't we add to Fleet Week a mission? And the mission will be to think through and try to practice what we might do in the case of what amounts to an inevitable emergency in the Bay Area, and have the military come and show us what they can do and interact with the first responders here and really make something out of it as a mission. And that has caught on, and I think it's been fair to say I've been involved in this. It gets better and better. As I'm thinking of this history and listening to the presentations today, that may be a theme for the next Fleet Week or something is prevention. Because a lot of what has been talked about is prevention. Not just what do you do and how do you cope with problems, but how do you do something to prevent in the first place. Like they were talking about retrofitting buildings in San Francisco, for instance. That's prevention. And there are all kinds of things like that, and maybe we could pool our ideas and talk a little bit about that subject. So that's a suggestion. But again, I think it's just fantastic here in San Francisco, and for me, it's wonderful to have this cohesion that's developed between the military and the Bay Area. As everybody says, there's going to be an earthquake, and we know that. And then We want to be prepared to prevent and also deal with it effectively. And you people will bring tremendous to the party, so thank you.